Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twin Talks Ballet. My name is Kirsten, and I'm here with my friend and former mindset coaching client, Grace Weidemann. Welcome, Grace. Thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
And I'm very grateful that you're here to share about not only some of your experience working together, but also we're going to specifically talk today about your relationship with rest and control, which is something I know that it's a very complicated concept to a lot of dancers who are so used to that narrative of you have to take control, take responsibility for your own results, work hard all the time. And it can get to this really toxic point where you cannot justify resting and you feel guilty resting. And that is a cycle that you found yourself in. I've definitely been there as a dancer before. And so I'm really grateful that you're here to just share some of the insights that you gained through the coaching process and especially to shed some light on the nuances of this topic for other dancers who know that they're getting burnt out. They're ready to find a healthier balance between taking responsibility and resting, but they're not really sure how to do it. So hopefully this video will provide some clarity and some inspiration to get going in that direction.
Absolutely.
So, Grace, first, I would love to ask you, what was your relationship with rest and control? Well, specifically, let's start with rest. What was your relationship with rest like prior to starting the coaching process?
Right. So before I started really exploring my relationship with rest and unpacking what had developed into a pretty toxic and unsustainable lifestyle, I would say that I really equated most types of rest with laziness or complacency or weakness or lack of discipline, lack of ambition. And I think it's really easy to fall into that type of mindset as an aspiring pre-professional ballet dancer, especially when you get to that point in your training when it kind of starts to become a little more real and you really start to understand what is required to become a professional ballet dancer. And it can also be challenging when, these ideas of like ambition and drive and discipline are really, really idealized and honestly like rewarded in ballet culture. And so for me, I just really got caught up in that cycle where I always had to be better. And everything that I was doing was never quite enough because I always knew it could be better. And you want that motivation to some extent because that's what can help take you to the next level in your training. But if when it comes at the cost of not allowing yourself to actually enjoy what you're doing because you're so focused on doing everything that you possibly can to make it happen, then well, first of all, you're going to end up shooting yourself in the foot and it's going to backfire and you're not going to make the progress that you think you're making. And then you're also not going to be able to appreciate all of the parts of the journey and all of the joy that, for me, I personally started with when I started ballet. And so I had really become very kind of hyper reliant on my routine and the things that I did for myself. And I had a lot of fear and anxiety around deviating from the things that I had developed that I had realized really worked for me. Mm-hmm. And so I really kind of just didn't think that rest was necessary. And I never made any intentional efforts to include it in my life other than like sleeping because you have to be able to sleep to get up and do things the next day. And so it was just very productivity oriented and didn't leave a lot of room for anything that wasn't directly serving my goal.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that because as you described that, I remembered parts of my journey actually, especially when I was in that phase that you were in of you were at Pittsburgh Ballet Theater School and auditioning for professional companies. And that is one of those phases in a dancer's life where it's like absolutely no excuses. You do everything you possibly can to give yourself the best possible chance for success in this very uncertain pursuit. And so, in the name of trying so hard to do everything you can so that you can, at the end of this, no matter what happens, not have regrets, it can be so easy to, like you said, tie every single activity to the question, does this serve my goal? Um, is this going to help me in ballet? But then that also puts your mind in this place of everything in life is about ballet.
Right. For sure.
There's no escape.
Yeah, that was definitely my experience.
Yeah. And what also was your relationship with control like? I know that we talked about rest, but what was your relationship with control like?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think I really realized that I had an issue with rest at first because I was kind of hiding it behind a bunch of other things that I thought I was struggling with, which probably had more to do with control. And I think the rest and the control thing are um, pretty related because, in being in a professional training environment and having the opportunity to dance in company productions and attend company rehearsals and kind of see how the dynamics of a professional organization works, I kind of started to realize that sometimes it's not like the difference between having one dancer do a certain part or get chosen over another can sometimes be very slight, and it's really hard to, well, I know now it's impossible to understand what goes into those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I was like really obsessed with trying to do everything in my control to make sure that I would be in the right place in the right time to get what I wanted and be successful. But because I was so determined to do that, I kind of like lost I didn't have a sense of what was actually in my control and what wasn't. And so it would lead me to be really, really hard on myself when I didn't get something that I wanted or when I failed, because it was my perception that this failure was directly related to my own personal inadequacies rather than um, a multitude of variables and external circumstances that all go into a certain outcome. And so I really overestimated my the consequences of my personal choices. And that was understandably leading to a lot of frustration because I felt like I was doing every possible thing that I could do and then some to get what I wanted. And then sometimes it would still not be successful or it would still not be enough to me. And that, I had a lot of internal conflict over that because in that process, I was really denying a lot of my emotional and physical and human needs in order to try and create a specific outcome that really was only, maybe 50% in my control, depending on the circumstances.
You made a lot of very good points there about how, there are so many nuances to taking responsibility and that being a great thing, but it kind of relates to that idea of too much of anything can be a bad thing. And when it's sometimes so difficult to cope with the truth that not everything is in your control, it can be just so tempting to just buckle down and focus so much on what's in your control and try to like add things into that arena of, well, maybe I can
sure.
control this and maybe I can, when you really can't. And so
Right.
obviously if um, we were talking and you were actually struggling with feeling like a victim, like, why does no one ever choose me? And blah, 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 blah. And the issue is you're not taking responsibility. We would be having a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But for you and so many other dancers, when the weight of that burden of responsibility for so many things that you're actually not responsible for is like just weighing you down, it can cause you to be so self-critical, to deny yourself of rest, and even to punish yourself when you don't achieve what you want to achieve. And that just makes a hard field even harder to be in.
Absolutely.
We don't need
Yeah.
to be making ballet harder on ourselves.
No.
So, what was it that really made you decide to make a change in your relationship with rest and control?
Yeah. Well, as I said, this was something that I didn't really even realize was going on for a pretty long time. Um, I think a lot of it kind of originated when I, officially started living independently, because I had lived away from home for a few years for my training when I was younger. But then when I started at Pittsburgh Ballet Theater in 2018 in their graduate program, that was like my first time really living like completely on my own.
Mm,
And I think because of that, I didn't really have a lot of the checks and balances that I used to have with the support system of like having people around me who care about me and can kind of provide some objectivity when I am, like really in my head or really pursuing something that isn't healthy or sustainable. Um, which I think is something that most dancers would struggle with at some point, whether that's like when they go away to train at school for the first time or when they're joining a company for the first time. But anytime that you're in this transition period or when you're in a situation that you've never been in before, we all have different coping mechanisms. And so for me, it was kind of just this very obsessive and single pointed focus that didn't really allow, as I said, for anything else in my life. And so then, right before you and I started working together, I had um, come off of a summer intensive that, objectively speaking, was really, really good. And it was pretty successful, but it hadn't exactly worked out the way that I had wanted it to. And I was frustrated and I was preparing for auditions for the next season. And I had just a lot of unaddressed stress. And then after, feeling a little bit dissatisfied with my performance that summer, I had gone back to visit my family and gone on vacation with them. And I had probably about a month where I wasn't doing like a regular ballet training environment, was training pretty intermittently and didn't always have the opportunity to take class. And so, coming from this super intense, super structured environment that worked really well for my obsessive tendencies, I just did not even know what to do with myself when I wasn't in that environment. And, I was really anxious and fearful about losing progress and getting behind and not being where I wanted to be when I would start the season in the fall. And, like I couldn't even really enjoy my vacation with my family because I was just always, always thinking about like what I needed to be doing and whether or not something I was doing during that time would be something that I would have to make up for and, come back from in the fall. And so, I was really unhappy. I was not a very fun person to be around. And, like my family and my friends, they kind of expressed some concern for me. Like, you don't seem like you're doing well, which I was not. I was like kind of, going a little bit stir crazy. And that's when I think my obsession, like, and my need to control and always be in control and always be moving towards the goal really came to light. And that's when I was encouraged to consider talking to someone about it and investigating mindset coaching. And that was something that I hadn't really thought about that much before, because I had had other resources in my life that I would periodically go to, but I had never really been in a situation like this where, I would not let myself rest.
Yeah, and I have so much empathy for how hard that must be, and even to look back on that time and to think like, "That was a vacation with my family," that ultimately did teach you a lot, and it led you to some life-changing action that you took, which is wonderful. It's really great that sometimes we do need those wake-up call moments that are really uncomfortable, or we need someone saying like, "Are you okay?" No, really, like, "Are you okay?" Um, and nudging us in a positive direction. But ultimately, it's so great that you use that time of friction and almost that self awareness that you can escape to really face it and to say, like, I want to change this. I don't want to keep living this way. And let's see if we could do something about it. So I'm really glad that you did reach out, and it's been so cool to just watch your transformation happen and adopting rest, finding what's in your control, what's outside of your control, and really leveraging that beautiful strength you have of taking responsibility, but just putting it into its place so
Right.
that you can live a healthier life and be more satisfied as a dancer, but also rest and be well
Absolutely.
and also put ballet in its place, which is definitely something a lot of us are facing right now, just with
Mm-hmm.
staying at home. I think a lot of dancers are recognizing like, wow, I kind of have to face the parts of me that aren't so well, the
Mm-hmm.
parts of me that are like, ballet is everything, and then you have
Yeah.
an experience like this and you're like, it's not actually everything. Dang it.
Yeah. I absolutely relate to that. And it's kind of an unexpectedly opportune time to talk about this. And just when
Yeah.
my coaching relationship with you began, like at the end of last summer, that
Mhm.
of course, I had no idea that all of this was going to be happening. But now,
Right.
being faced with the most extreme lack of control and, kind of, I want to say, conflict with
Mhm.
rest that I've ever experienced in my entire life. I'm really glad that I had that opportunity to work with you before this occurred. And I'm really hopeful that, to the dancers that are watching this video, that it kind of helps them if they're in a similar situation, which I would
Yeah.
imagine most everyone probably is right now.
Yeah, definitely. So, next, I'd like to ask you, what was it about the coaching process that really worked for you?
Yeah, so the coaching process really helped me to kind of decompartmentalize my brain and my life in a way. It just really allowed me to not criticize myself as much for what I was feeling,
Mhm.
because, in this really intense and rigorous routine that I had become used to, including not allowing time for myself to do other things, I also mentally kind of didn't leave very much space for my thoughts and feelings and emotions. And what I now see are things that were actually trying to tell me what was going on and express needs that I had been ignoring, um, are actually things that I really needed to be listening to. And that's something that I didn't realize until I had that objective perspective, or, just an outside person who could kind of relate and also see where I might be getting stuck. Um, and it also really helped me to identify my strengths and my weaknesses, and how, your strengths can very easily become your weaknesses, which is something that we've talked about a lot And, vice versa, your weakness, what you think are your weaknesses, which for me would have been resting, being compassionate towards myself, and self-care, and all of the other things that I enjoy doing outside of ballet, are actually things that you really need to be aware of and incorporate so that you can get the most out of all the areas of your life. Because, you know, if you look at them all as separate and think that you can just put all of your energy into one area without addressing the others, the capacity for growth and success in that area is going to be compromised.
Amen. Yes. Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, and also really glad that you mentioned that integrative approach and how it really did help you because you talked about the process of decompartmentalization. That's such a big word.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. um, and how that was really helpful for you. And it sounds like it was healing for you. And it's really interesting because using that idea of compartmentalizing your thoughts, your feelings, your desires, and these cues that your body gives you of emotion or fatigue or anxiety, these you mentioned, they're like cues trying to get your attention to show you how you can better care for yourself so that you can be well, so that you can pour more into the areas of life that really matter to you. But you can't really do that without the balance and without that integrative approach. And it seems that in some seasons of life, especially challenging ones, it is sometimes is like the only way you're going to get through it is by compartmentalizing, by just like putting some thoughts and feelings aside and just saying, I literally can't deal with this right now. Let's just focus on the task at hand. And it sounds like that worked for you for a time, but for your next season of life, uh, it wasn't going to. You had
Right.
to unpack the boxes and see yourself as a whole person again, and see life itself more holistically, and kind of to put ballet in its place so that it no longer just became this area of fixation and obsession that was driving you to not feeling so great.
Exactly.
Really, really glad to hear that. Um, Next, I'd like to ask you, what were some of your breakthroughs in the coaching process that really allowed you to actually embrace rest?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it was recognizing the areas that I would tend to fixate on in terms of like rest and control, and trying to do everything right or everything perfectly. And I see now, after doing all of this exploration, that my tendency to have frustration or obsession with other areas was really just a way of my need for rest and a little bit of grace in my life. That was really its way of manifesting itself, and I just wasn't aware of it until then. Um, so a lot of my frustration would be around, like how well I was training each day, and around my weight and my body image, and because I did recognize those as things that I could control, and so I was very, very concerned with controlling them. But then I realized that, you know, when I didn't have the benefits of the other areas of my life being balanced, such as rest and relaxation and self care and all of the things that we've been talking about, it didn't matter how much I would do in these other areas that I was obsessed with, because, as I said, they couldn't reach their fullest potential unless I was a whole person trying to make that happen. And when I wasn't resting, I wasn't, because I was really denying myself one of my most basic needs as a person. Um, and another one that I was able to recognize is a lot of like black and white thinking and extreme behaviors, which I think, has come a lot also from the culture of ballet that I grew up with in my training, where, like if you're not giving 100%, you might as well be doing nothing, or like if you're not giving your all, then it's not enough. And so for me, I would get really frustrated when I wouldn't like check all of my boxes for the day, or I wouldn't do everything that I needed. And so that was a really strong example of where I had a lot of black and white thinking in my life, which again, when your life is like this, it doesn't really leave a lot of room in between for anything else, because you're either, like at the bottom trying to figure out how you can get back up to where you were, or you're at the top worried about how you're going to keep yourself from getting down in the bottom again. And it's just like this really vicious cycle that does not work for very long at all.
So true. And I do want to affirm, like, it's so interesting that the mindset of trying so hard to control, first it comes from the assumption that you know what's good for you and you know what you should want and you know how life should go. That assumption on its own, if any dancer just removes that from their life, it instantly becomes so much easier to, as I like to say, hold your dreams and ambitions with an open hand. As in saying,
Agreed.
like, hey, this matters to me, but I'm not going to stiffen up and close my fist like this, because what if other cool ideas and inspirations come my way? Or what if a challenge inspires me to grow into a new passion or a new path? And I love this kind of metaphor of, like, for instance, if you are standing in the water at the beach and the waves are coming and you just completely stiffen up and you refuse to move your body or to be adaptable at all, you're just going to be knocked over. But instead, if you allow yourself to kind of soften your muscles a little bit and move with the water just enough to remain standing, you're able to kind of stick in your place and to stay strong when you're adaptable with the forces of life, instead of staying so stiff, like this is how it's supposed to be. Everything I do in life is like a math equation. It's so easy as dancers to be like, okay, if I eat this meal and then do this workout and then I do this and this and this, all these things got me good results before. So if I add all these together and I keep doing them every single day, then my life should certainly turn out good.
Yeah,
I will be a good
that's like
dancer.
my life story for the past 2 years.
It's so easy to get in that mindset though, because when you find a good thing, again with the black and white thinking, you're like, well, this has to be the thing that I do every
Right.
day in order to be certain about the results I'll get.
Mm-hmm.
Because gosh darn it, I have to get them. Because if I don't, I'm a failure, or whatever that story is. It's so easy to have a narrative going as a dancer. Like, first, that you have to achieve certain goals. Second, that you have to do certain things every single day without changing in order to get it. And that's not necessarily the case.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I really came to understand through this is that regardless of ballet, I mean, ballet is a pretty excellent example of this, but I think it can be true in all areas of life that everything that brings you joy in your life can also rob you of it if you hold it too tightly. And if you like put too much, if you give it too much power, and if you prioritize that over who you are as a person and what you need to be happy in your life. Because, for me, in retrospect, I think I really, as I said, fell into that pattern of thinking like, oh, well, I have to do this to be successful, and I have to give up this, and I have to not do this, and I have to always do this, and I can't do anything other than this if this is what I want. And, it had gotten to the point where fulfilling that was really, if it had continued for much longer, was going to be pretty harmful to me on a lot of levels. And I think deep down I maybe knew that. And it's a little disconcerting, like how willing I was to do all of that for for this outcome that I perceived I could control. And so, when I started to realize like, oh, like this actually isn't in my control and I could still do all of these things and it still might not work out. At first, I kind of had like a, well, then what's the point moment?
Yeah.
But that's where I was kind of able to rediscover that, like, well, once upon a time, you really loved to do ballet and you just did it because it was the best thing you had ever done and you just wanted to do it all day, every day. And when you can get back to that feeling, the outcome isn't important. And knowing that the outcome isn't important in that way is just so liberating, because then that it will actually put you in the right mindset of openness and love and joy that will be conveyed in a performance that will actually help you to live the dreams that you have.
Oh
And
man, so good.
yeah, I think it was just like really important for me to realize that I didn't have to worry about doing something that would jeopardize my dream, because for all intents and purposes, I was already living my dream. Like I already get to dance all day, every day, and perform things that I love and learn new steps and learn new pieces and variations and do all of the things that I really, really wanted to do. And so that is just so comforting. And it really helped me to kind of see like, oh, it's okay to rest and like I can actually enjoy this, and my enjoyment of what I do will not hinder my progress. It will actually accelerate it.
Oh, yeah, that's so amazing that then enjoyment can become a priority again, which it sounds like rest obviously allows you to enjoy your craft much more. And so
Absolutely.
then even though it was interesting, I remember some of the moments that were kind of light bulb breakthrough moments with your relationship with rest. And I remember when I said, Grace, what if you saw it as a discipline? And you're like, oh,
Because I'm
I can
like
do
already
that.
good at discipline, so I can just add that into it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you also kind of beautifully explained the idea of living successfully rather than living for success. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
feeling like you're chasing something you don't have, it sounds like you found kind of that embracing or that gratitude for what you already have that you've always wanted. And then from that perspective of already being grateful for what you do have, you can reach for more from a much healthier place mentally, because you're not desperate for something that you don't have. Rather, you're interested to see how much more you can do
Right.
instead.
100%.
I'd like to kind of ask a hybrid question about like, so basically, what are some like tangible changes that you've made in your day-to-day life that have allowed you to embrace rest, and how has making these changes, or what have you been able to gain by making these changes?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest thing that has changed is kind of how I approach all of the things that I used to do because I thought that I had to do them. And I thought that I would derail my progress if I didn't do them every single day and if I didn't do them perfectly every single day. And um, it's really allowed me to consider what the goal is behind the things that I do for myself. And like for example, I have a really specific morning routine that I do when I get up in the morning. And I used to like really set the tone for my day based on how I did that morning routine, and it was the same every single day, and it had to be done like in this time frame and in this way, because otherwise I just wasn't going to have a good class. but like even before I came to the realization that that wasn't true, I would have days where I wouldn't do things perfectly, or I would mess up by my standards and still have a good class, and I would be confused. So that was kind of like a little inkling that I had, like maybe you don't always have to do everything perfectly the way that you think you do. And so for me, it's really the mindset shift of like, I have to do these things if I want to have this outcome and be successful, to I do these things because I choose to, because I know that I feel better when I do them. And if I do these things, I will have a greater mental and physical capacity to enjoy dancing that day. And in terms of maybe some tangible practices or things that I've gained and been able to implement in my life is, like I have less fear around what will happen if I, go hang out with my friends instead of cross training, or if I like sleep in late on a weekend instead of getting up to do my morning routine, and like I take time to go read a book or go sit in a coffee shop or do something that will give me life in other areas of my life that I didn't really acknowledge as much before or see as equally important compared to my training and my progress. And you know so like some mornings maybe I need a shorter morning routine and 30 extra minutes of sleep, and it really just depends. And I it is something that you really have to acknowledge as like a trust in yourself, which is something that I didn't have before. I kind of had a lot of fear that I was gonna like really mess something up if I didn't do all of the things that I know worked. But now I see it was pretty foolish to assume that like my entire career and almost 10 years of ballet training have like would ride on whether or not I wake up like in a 15-minute interval in the morning. Like saying it out loud, like that's ridiculous. But to me at the time, I thought like if I didn't, like my career was gone. Like that's it. Like there's no coming back. But so yeah, just a little bit of that flexibility in my daily routine and in my life. And I do still try to be really intentional about how I plan things and how I organize my life in order to set myself up for success. But if something comes up in the moment where I strongly feel like I don't want to do what I think I should do and I want to do something else instead, I'm much better about being curious about where that's coming from, and I am okay with not following the plan if something else needs my attention more than my agenda.
That's a wonderful change that you've made because it sounds like you've been able to become adaptable and, live in the gray area of life that's honestly so much more realistic than
Mm-hmm.
the way we perceive the world in that black and white thinking mentality of if I just do this, then I can get this. Or if I don't do this, it's going to be a bad day. And just like maybe one aspect of that black and white thinking is helpful because it gives you the motivation to take action that could be positive. The other side of that is it can become this borderline like practice of superstition where if you don't do this thing, the
Yeah.
whole day is trash. And then it kind of becomes like this self-fulfilling prophecy that's just exhausting. And I
Mm-hmm.
love encouraging dancers, and I know we talked about this too. I love encouraging dancers to kind of reset constantly throughout class. For instance, if you do pirouettes to the right side and you messed up a lot, it's so easy to get really frustrated and to say, gosh, I'm having a terrible turning day, for instance. But that was the first pirouette combination of the whole class. You have many other opportunities to try again and to get curious about what you can change in your approach to get back on the horse, so to speak. But it's so easy in those moments to kind of throw it all away because the label is much more comfortable. It's a bad day. It's a bad turning day. I just can't do this. Instead, it's so refreshing to realize that, really, that's just the meaning you chose to assign to it. It doesn't mean it's actually true. So, even in one adagio combination, you can catch a thought like, gosh, my legs are so stiff and it just looks terrible, to what if I just breathe a little bit more and reset and just kind of like let that thought go? What else can I make out of this combination, this pirouette, this adagio, whatever it is? And it's so cool how just being adaptable like that, going into that gray area of thinking and really associating a more positive thought or positive meaning to the experience is so much more productive than that temptation to label something as all good or all bad.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've all been in that situation where, like you're doing something in class or you're partway through class and it's just not going well. And you're like, I just want this class to be over. Like today is
I'm
time.
done with it.
And, like nothing I do after this is going to be good. And, what's the point? And I think for me, I was just really able to realize like, if I ever get to the point in class or in rehearsal or in something where I feel like there is no return and I can't make anything better and I can't do better than I've done a few minutes ago, I'm definitely taking myself too seriously.
That's a
Definitely
good point.
mindset that is just not going to be useful for anything.
Totally. And, for anyone watching who's already thrown away all of 2020 as being garbage, I encourage you to reconsider, even though I think we can have a collective laugh at how crazy it's been.
Right.
A good laugh and a good cry, but y'all, 2020 is not over. It's not even halfway over. But people are like, it's
I'm ready for
already
it to be
terrible.
over.
I'm like, you got January 1st of 2021 is just another day. It's not,
Right.
it's realistically, there is literally no difference. Just the meaning you assign to it of, oh, this is a fresh start. So are you going to like throw away 6 months of your life because you think all of 2020, which hasn't happened yet, is terrible? Anyway, I'm sure
Craziness.
plenty of people who are watching are like, yep, I've already thought that. So take heart,
I mean,
everyone.
I'd be lying if I said that it didn't occur to me once or twice, but
I mean, I've thought of it.
I still have hope.
I have hope. Well, if you have hope, that's a great thing. So next, I'd like to ask you about your opinion of what do you think is the difference between taking responsibility for your life and your actions and then being overly controlling?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think that's really where, like, that is a line that I pushed for a really long time until, excuse me, it got to the point where I was definitely like beyond taking responsibility and just totally overestimating what I could actually do myself. And so, it really starts with just recognizing what is actually in your control, which can change depending on your situation. And, a lot of it just has to do with your mindset too, because if you feel like you are in a position of like scarcity or inadequacy and you're trying to make up for that or you're trying to compensate and you're just so concerned with we talk a lot about toward and away from motivation where like if you're really concerned about running away from something instead of going towards something, that's when that negativity and that kind of toxic energy in a way or like
We could say toxic energy.
Yeah, or it's a very anxious feeling, like
Yeah.
running away from something versus, the feeling of desire and joy and going towards what you want. Um, so like if you're in the former mindset, then it's really easy to overestimate what you can actually do if you're just trying to do anything and everything to get away from where you are, instead of like working on how you can get to where you want to be. And so by recognizing the things that you can actually control about your circumstances, you're able to make really intentional, conscious choices within those parameters that will allow you to be in the right place at the right time, or allow you to maybe see opportunities that you wouldn't have seen before, or be open to, different ways of getting to where you want to be that you might not have thought of. And it really just allows for a little bit more creative energy and kind of collaboration with your situation
Yeah.
to get to where you want to be. Because if you're considering, like, how can I, with what I have right now, use this to get to where I want to be in the future, instead of, I am here, I don't like it, I will do anything to get out of here. And even if in that mindset you're still thinking like, I want to get from here to there, that type of tunnel vision does not usually work very well.
Yeah. And it's great that innately in human beings, we have that response to protect ourselves from pain. But the flaw here that you're really pointing out is that, even though, yes, the human brain is wired to avoid pain before it seeks pleasure, the thing is, so many people motivate themselves through pain aversion, which is making a belief that the world is dangerous, so you need to do this, or you can't fail, so you have to do this. It's training your mind to perceive threats, danger, scarcity, scary things all around you in order to go in a positive direction, which really doesn't work
Yeah, it's kind
sustainably.
of like the back door way to get to what you want, instead
Yeah.
of just directly pursuing it. And I think that goes again into what you said about how, like, you make this huge assumption that the exact right way to get what you want, and
Yeah.
you just have to control all these things to do it. And when you buy into that, and you believe that like there is no other way, and like this is the be all and end all, it is really easy to lose sight of what's actually in your control.
Yeah. And then what's also around you that's beautiful, like, let's
Yeah,
not forget that
for
too. Like,
sure.
you recognize that you were living a version of your dream already, and so then you were able to unlock some of that childlike joy and passion for ballet again, which honestly is so lacking in the demographic of pre-professional dancers, because that's a time where training gets so serious and it's easy to just buckle under all that stress. And understandably, it's really hard for one's passion to survive through that really tough environment in those tough couple of years. Um, and so when you're actually able to have that joy and to, embrace it and dance with it, you literally shine. Like, people overestimate, let me go on the record saying this, okay? People overestimate how much um, your physique and your technical skills and your natural talent, how far that actually gets you. The
Mhm.
dancers that really stand out are the ones that have that X factor. And that X factor is often not only a sense of individuality, like, when a dancer has a sense of self, when a dancer actually sees themselves as a person and as an individual, like, there's something different in their countenance, in their eyes, in the way that they approach their movement, in their body language, literally. If you have confidence, that actually changes your presence. It stands out in a room of people who are insecure and shrinking like this. Okay, shout out to, what was
Absolutely.
that video like way back in the day of, what is the girl? She's like, don't be insecure, girl. I'm thinking of someone comment
I
below.
vaguely remember that.
It's like the Burger King whatever thing. Okay, someone comment. Um, anyway, we gotta spice up these interviews somehow. References to videos circa like at the year 2000. But anyway, like when you actually have that joy, you're able to have that special quality that people do notice, because the general energy in the room is stress, 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 insecurities,
Absolutely.
and more insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really big, you know, asset to you for sure. There's something else I was going to say on the difference. Oh, one last thing on just the difference between being overly controlling and taking responsibility is really summed up in how we use our language. So oftentimes when dancers say, I have to do this, I have to be this, they have to give me this part, things have to be this way, you're really insinuating that outside circumstances need to act in alignment with your will in order for you to be okay and for you to be happy. And that simply is an act of trying to take control over things that are not in your control. And that's going to cause a lot of inner conflict, because and you see evidence of the fact that they're not in your control, but relying on things having to be a certain way in order for you to be well
Right.
is instantly putting you in this desire to be in control of things that are actually out of your control.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, when you take responsibility, you can say, hey, I choose to do this. And I also choose to be okay if things don't work out that way. I choose to make the most of my situation. I choose to adapt. Because really, you're in control of your perspective and the way that
Mm-hmm.
you respond to all the things that are outside of your control. And that is plenty to keep you busy. And honestly, that's really
Absolutely.
what matters, because honestly, all of us, we're seeking a feeling from our achievements, but really, that feeling is just an experience. And we're actually totally in control of our experience of life, not our circumstances always, which I think
Agreed.
is really cool. If you just focus on the experience, it's really interesting that, ironically, circumstances start to kind of come up in alignment with your goals. The
Mm-hmm.
more you just focus on your power to choose your experience and your perspective and how you think and feel about what you're doing, how you act in response to what's happening, instead of like, things have to be this way for me to be happy,
Mm-hmm.
confident, whatever. So, anyway, I think we talked plenty on that point. My next question is, what do you think that dancers misunderstand about rest that prevents them from embracing it as as a healthy part of this balanced breakfast? No, just kidding. As a healthy part of their life and career.
Yeah, that is such a big like point of tension, at least it was for me anyway, because I felt like what I was trying to achieve in terms of, inner work and growth to be a better dancer and have more enjoyment in my life was kind of conflicting, or there was like a conflict between what I felt I needed to do and what is idealized and projected by the environment of being a serious ballet dancer. And I think that, as I said, self motivation, ambition, determination, discipline, and drive, and all of that is just so instilled in us from an early age that like I can't even remember a time, because I did ballet a little bit when I was younger, but I quit for a long time and didn't start again until I was 10. And so at that point, there was a lot of that was kind of starting to come into the classroom environment a little bit more. So I don't actually remember a time in my ballet training where those values weren't idolized and what everyone aspired to have in their lives and in their training. And I think like the willingness to suffer or to like just totally go to the end of yourself in your training is seen as admirable, and I would argue even necessary to become a professional ballet dancer. And so I think it's really easy to mistake drive and ambition for what you're doing with overwork and obsession, which I can definitely say is what happened to me in my personal experience. And I said this a little bit earlier, but it's really hard to remove yourself from that way of thinking when that way of thinking is consistently rewarded in your day-to-day life in the studio or performance environment. And so, it's really important to remember why you dance, which I mean, it sounds kind of like cheesy, but like it's really important to remember why you started ballet and what your motivation was for that, because I think that most of us probably didn't decide to be ballet dancers because we wanted to be tired and sore all the time, and we wanted to be yelled at, and we wanted to be like overworked and frustrated and just angry at sorry.
Oh, the kitty cat.
I'm sorry.
So cute.
Sorry. Brief guest on our YouTube video.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to leave that in.
But for me personally, as I got into more severe and serious training environments, I really started to be more motivated by fear than by love, which I think is probably a pretty common occurrence as you get older and higher up in the ballet world. And that was where I felt like I couldn't really enjoy my life and my ballet dancing and training until I had like made it, or I had gotten to where I wanted to go. And that was what kept me from resting and trying to control everything, because I didn't think I would be able to actually enjoy my career and the opportunities that I was having in the studio every day until I had that title or contract, or I had danced that role, or whatever it is for different people. But when you are like so concerned with like killing yourself to get there, you don't even have the energy to appreciate it once you do. And I'm so sorry. I need to somewhere else.
No, we're very cat positive on this YouTube
channel. Yeah.
Don't worry.
But yeah, I think a lot of the culture and sometimes, influences from the media or your peers or your teachers or people that you aspire to be like, it's really easy to assume that they got to where they are by, doing something perfectly, or they have like a secret or something, when really it's just like, yeah, you're going to have to work hard for it, but you don't have to. Well, first of all, you should not waste your time trying to be like another dancer, because I spend a lot of time doing that, and that's never going to happen. And it will just deprive you of experiencing your own natural talents and abilities, which are really what are going to make you successful in the first place. And the whole problem with that mindset is that it kind of implies that you can't have focus and frivolity in your life at the same time. Like that you can't have fun while you're working towards your goals. And that if you allow for that space in your life, then it's going to take away from the ultimate goal. But then in doing that, you forget that the whole reason that you want that goal in the first place is so that you can have joy and happiness and love for what you do and excitement in your career. And so if you don't come back to that along the way, it's not gonna be there when you get there. because
Very true.
it's not like something tangible that you can put away and save for later. Like I used to think, oh yeah, like I'll have fun or I'll enjoy what I'm doing when I'm on stage, or in a larger sense, like when I'm in a company. But if you don't enjoy the process, then you're never going to get those feelings back again. And you're never going to be able to, I think we have a tendency sometimes as people to like, the grass is always greener on the other side. Like we want what we don't have. So, for me, it was like, oh, like, well, I'll be happy when I get this thing. But then I got that thing and I would look back and think, oh, I was so happy at this other time in my life. And so like, you're always comparing and striving for something that doesn't exist, because all that exists is where you are at that moment in the process.
It's very true. You mentioned so many great misconceptions that
But
honestly,
a tangent there.
oh no,
Sorry.
no, no. There are a lot of misconceptions, and you hit on a lot of them. And it sounds like um, mostly you're really addressing these narratives that were handed in our training from a young age. That even you mentioned being affected by towards the beginning of our conversation of that association that we pick up of like you're a good dancer or you're even like a good person if you deny yourself, if you
Mm-hmm.
overwork, if you go to the extreme in actually putting your physical body and your mental health in danger for this goal, then you're actually worthy of the parts. You're worthy of praise. Oh, this is good, honorable, heroic behavior. I
For
can't
sure.
tell you how much I was exposed to this in my training, and specifically when I got into, a very serious pre-professional environment. Many people know where that is. um, I was told or encouraged to do some pretty atrocious things in order to keep up with what everyone else was doing. We were encouraged to dance an obnoxious amount of hours a day. We were encouraged to deny the fact that we had injuries. But even it got to the point where I had actual tearing in my ACL and my patellar tendon, and I was told, oh, you don't know what a real injury is. You don't know the difference between pain that you have to get over and an injury. And I was like, I can literally show you my MRI if you want.
Like there is medical evidence.
I didn't know what I was actually injured.
I just got some input from the other twin to Twin Talks Ballet. Kelsey said that she was, say that again, literally.
I had 5 stress fractures, and the PT at Houston Ballet said, oh, really, you're probably not injured yet. Stop. Like, come back in a few weeks.
Okay, for the YouTube audience, you have 5 stress. She had 5 stress fractures that actually were so bad they showed up on an X-ray, which if you know, like that's bad. And the PT was of the company said, "Oh, you're probably not injured. Basically, get over it."
Yeah, I mean, I had one
ballet culture.
It was bad, so like I can't imagine 5.
Right. So I just want to encourage dancers to reclaim their power to say enough is enough. No, that's straight up not true.
Right.
It's okay to reach your breaking point and to say, I am literally not willing to do that for ballet. Or you know what? I don't believe what you believe, that it has to be this way for me to dance. And I will get as creative as I need to dance without buying into that really damaging story. And so dancers do have the ability to do that. You truly don't, I like to say this, you don't have to do anything in life. Yes, there are consequences to every action and inaction, which was probably triggering for you, Grace. Consequences to everything. But, recognize that there are some costs to count that are so worth it. You don't have to show up to this super toxic environment every day. You don't have to run yourself into the ground working so hard if in a year you will be so burnt out you never want to dance again. Or you don't have to also work so hard that you will be injured for another year, and then, like me, there goes your professional career, which of course beautiful things ended up coming out of that, but it was a hard lesson to learn that because of all the have to narratives going in my mind, I drove my body way past its limits because I thought I was a strong, honorable, like motivational, inspiring dancer for doing that. But no, in fact, it was just stupid.
And I think I'm just so glad that I caught my burnout at the point that I did, where it wasn't yet beyond the point of recovery where I felt like, like I have to stop dancing because it is like literally going to kill me. And I just think that it's so important to, have those conversations and have those realizations and have those breaking points and listen to them when they occur. Because for me, like, fortunately, like I still was able to find that love that I had for ballet and start to be motivated by it again instead of, pushing and pushing and pushing from this fear motivation to where I couldn't have gone back to dancing the way that I had before if I wanted to. And so, for other dancers who might be experiencing that presently, like, unless, like, it's usually not, you're usually not as far gone as you think, and there is a different way to do it, but so many people just don't know that there's a different way to pursue the career, and that, like, it doesn't have to be that way all the time. Or even like ever, I would argue, if you are able to, develop and integrate the right mindset that really continually serves you.
There you go. Case in point. Mic drop. So good. Last two questions. So first, what are some just simple insights or takeaways that you really want to share with some dancers who are in that position that you were in about 9 months ago, actually?
Yeah. Well, first of all, rest is important. We all need to do it, whether we like it or not, whether it's convenient or not, but you cannot be your best, most successful self as a dancer or as a person if you don't take that time to give back to yourself. And, like people say a lot, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're not taking time to fully rest, you're not going to fully perform, and you're not going to fully meet the goals that you have in any area of your life. And the other thing is that, like, you have to understand what rest looks like for you, because it is different for everyone. And, it's way more than just sleep. Like, as I said, like, I was sleeping fine. I went to bed at like 9 o'clock every night. I got my hours in, but that's not the same as resting and actually giving back to yourself and restoring the parts of yourself that may have become depleted over the course of your day or week or whatever your circumstances are. And so I think you have to be able to acknowledge what rest is, and you have to be like really committed to incorporating it in your life. Because when you have a busy schedule, an intense schedule, like I do and like many other dancers do at this time in their lives, it's not just going to work itself in on its own. Like, you have to treat it as importantly as you treat your training, because that's how you're going to get the most of it and the most out of it, And if if you're feeling like you're stuck, it's probably because there's some need or some desire within you that's being expressed that you're not honoring, or that you're not even just like able to hear. Because, for me, it started as I would have a need or a desire come up that wasn't directly related to my goal of becoming a professional dancer. And so then I would ignore it. And then after a while, after ignoring it long enough, I just stopped hearing them because, like when you dismiss it for that long, it just stops coming up on your radar. And that's where you can get into that really dangerous place of not understanding what your breaking point is or when you're going to do too much. And as I said a little bit earlier, it's really important to have that trust in yourself and in all of the things that you do right. Because when I started incorporating rest into my routine a little bit more, it's not like I just quit ballet and took naps all day. I still did all of the things that I knew would pay off and help me to get where I wanted to be. But then if I didn't, tick every box, I wasn't as concerned about it derailing my progress because I had that trust in all of the other things that I had done right. And, it's ridiculous to assume that doing one thing wrong is going to completely offset 10 years of doing the right thing and, being the best that you can be in every situation. And, you're just going to appreciate your training so much more if you have that time to be without it. And if you have that time to step away from it, because if you're totally immersed in it all the time, you're going to get sick of it and you're not going to see the value that it has in your life anymore because it'll just feel like obligation instead of desire. And so when you actually take a moment to step out of it, you can gain a little bit of objectivity so that you can, remember why you choose to do what you do and how that brings value to your life instead of being so immersed in it that you can't even see any other way of being.
Yeah, that's so good. Resting does allow you that opportunity to kind of jump outside of your mental box for a second so you can look at what you're doing and kind of your grind from a bigger picture, more objective view, and then enter back into it more thoughtfully, more refreshed, and with a much better mindset around what you're doing.
Absolutely. And it kind of,
go ahead.
Sorry, helps you move from the, have to get to
right
perspective. Because we all have days when we don't want to get out of bed in the morning, and it just does not seem like we want to be doing what we've chosen to do. But by allowing myself to rest and have other things and acknowledge that there are other options in my life other than what I choose to do, it kind of reinforces my belief and desire that this is what I want to be doing. And I wake up thinking maybe I'm tired today, or maybe I'm fatigued, or maybe I had a hard day yesterday and I don't know if I can do it today, or if I don't know if I can do these things that I expect of myself. And, acknowledging you don't have to be doing this, but you choose to because I would be really sad if I didn't get to do ballet today. And, when you rest, you just have room for all of these other positive experiences to come into your life and positive perspectives and
awareness.
Insightful. Yeah, awareness. That's the word I was looking for.
That is not a tangible thing. Otherwise, I would say it's worth its weight in gold, but it doesn't really work. It's valuable.
It is very valuable.
So to round this out, I'd like to ask you, would you recommend mindset coaching to ballet dancers? And if so, why?
Absolutely, 100%. I think everyone should seek it out in some form, whether that's like, even if it's just talking to someone that you really trust about it and like having the opportunity to express these types of concerns and feelings. Um, because personally, I think that ballet companies should have like mental health professionals on staff the way they have physical therapists and like all of these other resources for dancers, because I think it's just such a key part that hasn't been acknowledged up until pretty recently. And I actually have seen a lot of like well-intentioned efforts to bring that into the ballet culture a little bit more, which I 100% appreciate. And I think that that is like an excellent step in the right direction. But I mean, dance is truly a testament to what the body can do through the precision and the
Cat positive channel.
Yep.
Sorry.
Anyway, it just really affirms what the body is capable of through the precision and training of the mind. But if that is left unchecked, then it can very easily become toxic and harmful. And I think we really are deprived of the education of how to train our mental muscles in the same way that we train our physical muscles, because I mean, you can't really have one without the other, just like physiologically, but then also, especially in a high performance environment that is so physically demanding and just goes, I mean, I think it's the hardest sport personally, but not that I've really tried any other sports, so like I can't really say that from experience, but it's also challenging when you're kind of surrounded by negativity in a way, or like something's wrong and you have to make it better rather than seeing what's already right and how you can improve it. And so I think mindset coaching, I tried to stop that one, but yeah, I think that mindset coaching has really helped me to hone in on my mental fitness as well as my physical fitness, because you can't separate those two things. And I really, really hope that in future years that it would like the mental health consideration would be something that is not only accepted but also promoted and encouraged and even provided in the ballet culture, because so many dancers don't know that like it doesn't, like they don't have to martyr themselves for their career, and they don't have to give up all the joy and happiness in their life by committing to this career. And it's not as hard as you would think to be it's not as hard as you would think to shift your mindset. It just requires a little bit of intention and commitment and belief that there's a better way of doing things.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I really do hope it encourages dancers to seek out help, because these insecurities and anxieties and fears that we live with so often, limiting beliefs about ourselves, broken sense of identity that we carry, all these things, they seem like, oh, I can blow it off. Oh, it's fine. But as you get older, you really see that acknowledging these things really does matter. If you leave them be, it is not much different than a physical injury that you completely ignore. If you continually allow your anxieties or lack of willingness to rest, or whatever it is that is, stopping you from functioning well, if you allow that to persist, you are going to just continue down that same train track of living a life that allows for these things to just continually be there. If you don't
Absolutely.
work on your confidence and what you believe is possible for you, or if you don't have a time to like really talk and let your thoughts out and get that anxiety off and discover more of who you really are, then how will you seek opportunities that are in alignment with what's really best for you? If my cats are literally destroying my apartment, but how will you seek opportunities and make choices that are actually best for you if you don't even know you? You know, and so
Exactly.
few dancers actually make time and space to get to know themselves, and it's really um, super well done in the hands of a professional who also like understands dancers. And I'm glad that I'm not the only one who does this. There are a handful of other people who work in the mental health field who also understand dancers, because one thing I've really seen is that um, obviously therapy is very valuable, counseling valuable for sure, and it really does help. But what I have been exposed to as a dancer myself who has gone to therapy in the past, and also in working with many dancers who have had experiences with therapy before, it's not the therapy that's bad, it's actually that they had limited results from it because they did not feel understood by their therapist or their counselor.
Yeah.
And that's a really big deal for dancers. It can be hard to really open up or to even like fully take what someone is saying if you don't believe that they understand you. So you're
Right.
gonna
And
kind of have a wall up.
yeah, and I think part of what worked really well for me working with you as a coach was that I knew that you had had similar experiences and also achieved things that I was trying to achieve, and would really have, empathy from experience in that way that I wouldn't have had if I had worked with someone else. And so it is, I think, also important to have someone that you think would really understand where you're coming from, if not from personal experience, then at least from exposure. And that was something that was just super invaluable for me in the coaching experience. And as I said, highly recommend it to everyone. Like, work on it now so that you don't have to like come to this giant
Don't go too
breaking
far.
point later in your career. And yeah, just get ahead of it if you can. Like, there's no reason to not.
Exactly. Well, thank you so, so, so much, Grace, for sharing your experience, your wisdom, your insights, and just for being open and vulnerable with other dancers who I'm sure have been nodding their head this whole time. They've probably been like, oh my gosh, this is me. No one's talking about this. And so thank you for not only speaking about your story, but probably speaking to a lot of people who are living through the same thing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share. And I really appreciate everything that you've done for me as my coach. And this dialogue with you has been so wonderful.
Aw, internet hugs. Well, we will sign off here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you've made it this far, God bless. And we'll see you next time. Bye.